What's happening, everybody? And thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Crash Bang Boom podcast. Today's guest is drummer Ian Maciak, who has worked with the group Machinedrum and can be found on both Instagram and his Patreon under Ianhitsdrums. Ian and I get into his synthesis of electronic music, working with Machinedrum, playing and recording in his house, go-to drums, and a whole lot more. So I hope y'all dig it. Crash Bang Boom podcast can be found on iTunes, Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Luminary, Google Play, Podbean, Amazon Music, Podcasts, and many more. Feel free to check out any of the previous 200 plus episodes. Give me a like, a subscription, and or a positive review. The support is appreciated. Shout out to my sponsor, New Orleans Record Press. If you're looking to release some vinyl, hit them up and check out all the electroplating, mastering, design, packaging, vinyl coloring options, and they got a real-time quote generator to add it all up so you can keep tabs on it all. They also print 12 and 7-inch records in 150 and 180 gram variants, and they do small runs of 100 and larger runs up into the thousands. So hit them up, and that's NewOrleansRecordPress.com. All right, let's do it to it. Ian Maciak, a.k.a. Ianhitsdrums. Crash, bang, boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Yeah! All right, I'm here with Ian Maciak. I had to take a little time on that last name pronunciation, and I know the original Polish pronunciation is even tougher, so I'm glad I got it right out the gate. It's kind of rare. Also, a.k.a. Ianhitsdrums on Instagram. That's how I kind of became aware of you, and I love seeing all the stuff you post up there, so it'd be cool talking to you about that and picking your brain. But how you doing, man? It's like sunny and nice there. You're having a beer. You're living the good life, buddy. You've been playing drums all day. What the fuck's going on in Pennsylvania?
Well, not much other than that. I mean, we had a little break in the rain, so I'm out here. I'm actually being blinded by the sun and the sweat getting in my eyes, so it's a give and take.
Yeah, man, you need one of those Alex Van Halen like headbands, old NBA headbands on, sweatbands.
Yeah, exactly. Pull the hair back.
Exactly, man. You got a good head of hair, man. I appreciate a good head of hair. I too once had that, but I'll envy yours for the meantime. Where are you in Pennsylvania, man?
We're in Erie, PA.
Okay.
We're like 10 minutes from the lake, so we're very northwest.
Northwest. Okay, so how far are you from Pittsburgh, for instance?
It's about an hour and 45 minutes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, my wife's, her whole family, they're all from Pittsburgh, so we'd make the drive from Brooklyn to Pittsburgh, and they actually lived a little bit outside of it, and that was still, at best, 6 hours getting there, so I kind of have a sense.
Right.
You don't really think of Pennsylvania as being as horizontally long as it actually is, but it's a pretty damn long state.
Yeah, it's a big state. And that's actually, I grew up in Pittsburgh. My family's still down there, my brother.
Nice. I really dig the city, man. Growing up in Southeast Louisiana, you know, there's rivers and bridges and all that stuff everywhere. So when I went to Pittsburgh, I was like, oh, I love to see how the city kind of conformed to the river. And then you had all the bridges running across it and the whole layout.
Right.
Super cool city, man. And cool scene, cool people. I dig that town, man. I really like it.
Yeah, definitely. A little more hills than Louisiana, though.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm out here in Utah, and it's mountains, and I'm trying to get my swamp lungs to acclimate to this shit out here. And needless to say, I go mountain biking, and dude, my lungs are on fire out here. Oh, my God. Well, I would ask you what's been going on since all this COVID madness began, but having scrolled back pretty extensively through your Instagram feed, I would say I kind of have a sense that it might revolve around playing awesome beats with your girlfriend and dog sitting on the couch. Is that semi-accurate?
Yeah, that's honestly been about it.
Were you doing much in the way of live projects, out playing gigs necessarily pre-COVID? Or were you doing
pre-COVID? I was doing a lot of local gigs, traveling here and there, but mainly local gigs, and then just remote recording because I still had a studio space before quarantine hit, and then a couple weeks into that, I didn't want to pay for it anymore, and I already had all my stuff at the house anyway, and that was working out great.
Right. That's amazing. So you were just able to set up in your living room, it looks like?
Yeah.
Just in a corner and get your mics, drums, and everything, and you're not driving everyone in the house crazy necessarily?
No, luckily my wife is totally cool with it. The dogs put up with me as long as I get them outside a couple times a day.
That's awesome. Did you have to alter your touch at all and play more dynamically necessarily, or be more conscious about it? Or have you always had a pretty dynamic playing style that lent itself to like what you do?
Yeah, I don't think I really changed anything. I'd say the only time I do change anything is if it's like 10:30 at night and I just have like some idea I want to put down, then yeah, I'll try to play a little bit quieter. But no, I didn't really have to change much.
Yeah.
Even in my old space, it was such a big room and there wasn't really much in it other than my drums. I felt like it was so easy to be loud in there that I kind of started playing to like the acoustics of the room. So I didn't want all the reverb coming back at me. I wanted to play to the room.
Right. Well, did you get into anything unexpected, be it outdoor activities or even any particular records that piqued your interest in the bizarre year that was the majority of 2020?
Just being at home with my wife, Katie, more consistently was like, like I said, after the first couple weeks, I got rid of my studio. And then like a week after that, I was like, why did I even have a studio? This is so much better just being at home with her and the dogs all the time.
Yeah.
So it was definitely nice just having that more time together, because before that I always thought like, well, I need to have a space, I need to like go to work every day and that bullshit, but I really didn't.
Right. Absolutely. When we moved out here, I got a drum room. It's something that I've mentioned occasionally on the podcast, and I've been loving it. I was just down there earlier. But unfortunately, I do like to play, I guess, a little bit louder and have some louder kits. I've been playing some of my smaller jazz kits and trying to dampen the sound that I think was going through, because I'm playing down in the basement, and my wife works up technically 2 floors up on the back of the house, and I'm assuming it's going through the ductwork, and I can't seem to figure out exactly how to dampen that, aside from literally just putting like, foam over like the vents at times. So it's been a challenge.
That can get dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's that. Luckily it was cool for a while, so we could just open up the windows and she would be good for air, but I'm assuming as it gets hotter, that could be a problem. But we were talking a little bit about playing gigs and stuff. I know you've worked with the group Machinedrum, and was just curious sort of what your role was in working with that group, because like a lot of more produced bands, and you have a great production sense in the way that you both play and produce your drums. The lines are a little blurred when I listen to that music as to whether or not that's you playing, that's a loop, that exactly what it is.
Right.
What was your work with them?
So Machinedrum is just Travis Stewart, and it's his one of his projects, one of his aliases. But I think he hit me up about 3 years ago on Instagram, and he just wanted to have me track for a tune that he was doing, and that ended up turning into a couple tunes. And for this last album, I think I recorded all the parts for Sleepy Pietro, which is the track I'm on, maybe a year and a half ago, or even like 2 years ago now, because he's always sitting on so much music. And the first couple that I recorded for him aren't even out yet. They're going to be coming out on the next EP that he's going to drop. I'm not sure when yet, but I think it'll be sometime this summer or this fall.
Nice.
But working with him, I mean, it's super easy for me, at least, because I've listened to his music for like a decade, even before I got a chance to meet him, or just online at least. So it was definitely like a pinch myself kind of moment when he hit me up and was asking for drums. But the first couple, he had like drum parts written out, and then I would listen to those and basically mimic those note for note. And because he just wanted to have that layer of live drums and electronic drums. And for Sleepy Pietro, I used my 22-inch Sugar Percussion concert kick, so it doesn't have a front head on it. And I used a 8-inch LP micro snare for the snare sound, and then 2 sets of hi-hats, and that was it.
Nice.
And I think for the other part, I just had to do like an overdub of a ride cymbal. But yeah, for that, it's usually pretty simple setups that can get the job done for a lot of those tunes. Nice. But for the one tune on the next EP, I was talking to him not long ago, and he said that like he used all of the drums that I gave him plus his electronic drums underneath of it. So the entire time it is me playing, and then his drums are underneath. So when I would do a fill compared to where his beat continues on, he got to do like some really cool production and processing on it, so you can hear my fill, his drums are still going, and then it makes like its own rhythm over top of it.
That's awesome. So that's one of those instances where it's something that I've experienced with my own electronic music, that in trying to emulate what I do within a DAW or something like that is kind of its own thing. And then when it comes time to work out the mechanics of how that actually happens, it informs you a different way and makes you play a different way, because it's a little, it can be at times counterintuitive, because what works on a keyboard or a MIDI keyboard or just by editing, it can be a completely different thing when you try to work the mechanics out. So I like the way that it informs your playing when you do that.
Yeah, right. Well, it was funny when Tigran Hamasyan is a piano player on the track that I'm on.
That guy's a monster. Oh my
crazy.
God.
He's so good. So Travis replaced the drums that he had with my drums, and he sent it to Tigran, and Tigran's like, "You sent me the same file." He's like, "No, those are the drums. Those are the actual drums."
That's crazy, dude. Wow. Yeah, that guy's worked with some sick drummers. I interviewed Nate Wood, who is also like another drummer. When every time I watch him, I'm just like, all right, the aliens are here.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to worry about them coming at some later time. He is here. It's unbelievable, that guy. But that's awesome that you even got to be on a track with it's Tigran, right? Hamasyan?
Yeah.
Nice, man. That's killer. Well, speaking of some of those drummers, as far as drummers that sort of operate in that reverse engineered electronic music world, which you could certainly attribute back, or at least I attribute back to like Jojo Mayer and Zach Danziger, and more recently the Adam Betts, Chris Dave, and DeAnthony Parks and Mark Giuliano, those guys. What's your story on sort of how you found yourself in this world, and did it start with some of the aforementioned drummers and then reverting back to electronic music, or was electronic music sort of always an interest of yours?
Well, for inspiration, I think it was always just electronic music. Mm-hmm. I never really had like a favorite drummer that was playing those styles. I would always much rather just listen to like actual producers or DJs do that. So I was always trying to emulate just the electronic sound and not like the way someone else played electronic music.
That's interesting. I would say I'm kind of on the other end of it because I mean I think I probably started digging on Square Pusher after I heard what Jojo Mayer was doing, and at the time maybe originally it was just Prohibitive Beats or whatever, and I had some friends in New York who were going to see it, and they told me about it, and they're like, no, he's actually playing some of this shit, and then I started to see him more often, and then I was like, what is the stuff that's could possibly be inspiring him? But it's definitely interesting, because when I watch you, and especially JoJo is a pretty extreme case of it, there is a pretty good amount of hand technique involved to squeeze out some of those notes the way that Square Pusher or Effects Twin or some of them would sort of smear those and pitch up and squeeze.
Yeah, the time stretching and
stuff like that. And to be able to do that, it does take a pretty good bit of hand technique. So on that end, is that something that you focused much on, or how did that work out?
Honestly, I think like most of where my technique came from, because I really don't work on it that much. The one thing I always try to think about is just like, simple body mechanics and physics, but I just make sure whatever I'm doing isn't, hurting me. Yeah. It's just like the least resistant, the path of the least resistance every single time.
Yeah.
So I'm not thinking like, well, do I need to move my fulcrum? Do I need to do that? I mean, I'm trying to keep like everything as loose as possible. So when I play, say I'm playing the hi-hat in a lot of my videos, if I'm doing stuff at like 174 to 180 BPM, and I'm going from the 8th note and then doing 16ths, like groups of 3 or 4, my hand like will move around the stick a lot. And it kind of goes in like some phrase, or not phrases, but like groupings of 8. I kind of like switch it up, or just to get a different sound, like I'm going to be holding the stick a little bit differently every time. So I just try to keep everything fluid, but I'm not really like sitting down on a practice pad and like analyzing my technique.
Right.
I'm just trying to make sure everything I'm doing, I'm not hurting myself.
Yeah. So it's more of a product of fluidity and just naturally playing what it is that you're trying to execute, as opposed to sitting down and running through particular rudiments.
Right. Oh yeah. yeah, I honestly never do that.
That's crazy, man. I was speaking to Scott Pellegrom earlier, who's an awesome drummer, interesting guy to talk to.
No, he's like Mr. Technique.
Totally, he really is. He's a great player, man. He's all over the place. He's a wild guy to talk to.
I got to meet him at NAMM a couple years ago.
Nice. Well, we were kind of gotten in the discussion about how with electronic music, or once again, sort of reverse engineering that, a lot of people, I feel like at a certain point, were playing with a lot of electronic pads. And then it became more of the thing to maybe acoustically alter acoustic drums.
Right.
And I think that's certainly something that you do. And I think also because of that, people started making more interesting cymbal stacks and different sort of ornamental stuff to alter your sound. You know, big fat snare drum thing came in.
Totally.
Different snares, different designs. So I think the industry started veering that way, seeing the drummers alter their kits acoustically. But would you attribute that to any particular like player necessarily, or any? It's kind of hard to say where that started.
I mean, I feel like a lot of it just sound wise maybe would come from like Chris Dave. But for so much of what he does, like, I mean, he has some pretty wild cymbals
For sure.
and a lot of different drums, a lot of snares. So I always liked having different snare sounds, different hi-hat sounds.
Yeah.
But a lot of the reason like he gets those sounds is just how he's playing everything.
Totally.
And like treating his body as like, you know, like a mixing board. So you know, you can have your snare and your hi-hat super low and just be really pounding on the kick, and then, you know, push the fader up and kind of switch things around like that. But no, I can't really like pinpoint seeing any particular drummer with stuff on Eric Harland a lot too, just like having bells on the floor tom and different things. He always had a bunch of stuff on his hi-hat. I always liked experimenting. Like since I had drums, I was always just either setting up weird kits or seeing how, you know, trying to leave no stone unturned when it comes to sound.
Totally, man. Would you say, what is the ratio of sort of altering your kit acoustically as opposed to doing it in post? What would you say that ratio would be?
Well, I mean, depending on what I'm recording, if I'm doing a jungle tune and I want the drums to sound electronic, it always starts acoustically. So maybe like smaller hi-hats, put a towel inside the hi-hats, maybe even put some tape on top. Lately, what I've been doing with my snare, I've been turning the snare wires off and then putting a bell rope on top. And I use a coated Diplomat on top and I think a pretty normal snare side head. But putting a bell rope on top or something else that's going to simulate the snare wire sound. Because I feel like when I turn a lot of the stuff for drum and bass jungle, like you kind of want that cranked up snare sound.
Sure.
But the wires can choke the sound of the drum so much. So now without the wires on, putting something on the top head, I feel like I'm getting more tone out of the drum, like a more natural tone, while still having that snare sound. And then from there, usually all I need to do is just like a little bit of EQ, some compression. And for my videos lately, I've been messing around with gated reverb on the snare. So that's been fun. Just making it like a super staticky sound, like real short staccato.
That's something I need to mess around as well. I haven't really gone there too much. But I was mentioning earlier sort of your production sense, which I think is one of the things that I really like about your whole approach and playing and everything. But we spoke a little bit about sort of the live and in studio drummers altering their sound, but are there any producers that you dig, and not even maybe specifically for drum sounds, but maybe just the sound of a recording as a whole, and of course drum sounds, but are there any producers you especially dig?
I'd say one of the most influential albums for me was Fahrenheit Fair Enough by Telefon Tel Aviv. Can't talk today. Because I'm like, almost all those sounds don't include drum sounds at all. They're completely different sounds, but because of the way they're orchestrated and their rhythmic value, like they become the drum sounds. So it was something that I knew was like, okay, there's no way of achieving this type of sound on an acoustic kit. So just having to pick out like what sounds are okay. So that's sort of the hi-hat. This is in place of this one synth is kind of in place of the snare. There's still like enough kick in a lot of those tunes that it's like clearly that's where the kick drum lies. So playing along to that and trying to figure out everything that was going on, it made me think about how I want to get my drum sounds, and then try to figure out how to process everything to sound anything like that, because it's not drums. It's, you know,
Right.
it's synths, it's modular stuff, it's samples.
Nice.
So I'd say that album alone like really made me think of like more just being more conscious of my drum sounds when it comes to genres like that, and how important it is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, what age did you get your first kit, and did you study with anybody that was particularly influential along the way, or are you kind of more self-taught?
I think it would have been 6th grade, I guess. At least having like a drum set that was like mine, because everybody in my family plays music. And I remember at least the first house that I grew up in, there was a drum set down there, and then everybody else had their amps and guitars and everything. But I think I had my first drum set when I was in 6th grade.
Okay.
And I wasn't taking kit lessons then. I was just doing like the school programs.
Yep.
And I think maybe like seventh or 8th grade, I started taking lessons with like a local guy, but it was very much just super basic things. And he was definitely a jazz guy, so we were just like working through some books. And then when I started marching band, like the high school marching band, when I was in 8th grade, our drum instructor then eventually started giving me kit lessons later on. And I'd say like his name's Brandon Paluzzi. And he definitely was like my most influential drum set teacher. Like he taught me, and I mean, he taught me all through, or most of the way through high school. And then I started taking lessons with him after like, well, at one point, the entire music staff got fired, including him, for a really dumb reason.
What was the reason?
So basically, some of the kids in the marching band were complaining that they weren't getting enough water breaks, aka our head instructor was like too hard on them. And then there's a big parent teacher meeting, and they decided to just can the entire music department.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, it sucked, because every instructor during that time, like, they didn't deal with anything that wasn't really good.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Brandon definitely taught me, at least like in a traditional sense, like the most on drum set. And I'd say everything else, it's kind of just been me learning by myself.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking a little bit about like altering sounds and whatnot. If you're gonna play a gig, and you're only going to be able to bring so much, you can't bring everything in your house.
Right.
Is there a particular snare that you found that works with most applications? And, you know, obviously varying with tuning and or some of the alterations you were mentioning, but has there been one snare where you're like, this is kind of my go-to?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, all my drums are Sugar Percussion, but I got to go out and do the snare build workshop with him a couple years ago after I was at NAMM, and I built a 5x14 mahogany stave drum. And that thing, I mean, it does anything I want. I use it for almost every single gig. And I have another 6x14 Eastern Black Cherry from Jefferson.
Wow.
And I mean, same way that those drums can really do like everything that I need them to do.
Yeah. Wow. And you said that's Sugar Percussion?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with them, man. Where are they based out of?
He was based out of Santa Cruz, but he just moved his shop to Portland.
Oh, wow. He's out in Portland now.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to check that out. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, really great drums.
Nice. As far as the bass drum, same thing, Sugar Percussion, any particular dimension that seems to work best?
So the only two I have right now, I mean, they're like vastly different. I have a 16-inch poplar, and I have the 22-inch poplar, but it's the concert kick, so no front head.
Right. That's awesome. And then between those two snares and those two bass drums, those are pretty much your go-to drums, huh?
Yeah, and especially the 16-inch kick. I like it has plenty of low end, and it's good for any like jazz trio stuff that I'll do locally.
Uh-huh. What's the depth on the 16?
I think it's 11.
Oh wow, all kinds of
It's
strange
It's 11. So I think on all of his toms and kicks, he does odd number depths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. And I've seen you play like a floor tom as well. Is that Sugar Percussion as well?
Yeah.
That looks like a 14.
Yeah, it's a 14. I have the 16-inch kick, 22-inch kick, 12-inch rack tom, 14-inch floor tom. Those are all poplar.
Yeah.
And then I have the mahogany snare, the cherry snare, and a 5x12 white oak snare.
Oh, nice.
Very cool. The white oak snare is like my really twangy, pingy, like drum and bass jungle snare. That's usually always up on my kit. I love it. It's usually in the rack tom position.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I think I've actually seen that then. Very cool.
It has a wicked sound to it.
Yeah, I've seen you play the little LP 8-inch little snare. I've got one of those as well. They sound pretty awesome, especially for that real high kind of jangly drum and bass stuff, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally. Are there any particular cymbals that you've been digging? I know you've got an array of kind of like warped crazy cymbals, the all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I recently got the Zildjian Raw Crash, which I don't even know what the actual dimension of it is because it's so wonky.
Yeah.
It's basically like a 24, 25-inch cymbal.
Wow.
But I really like that thing. It has a really, really short sustain, really like unique bell sound, and I just love riding on it too.
Yeah.
I've been digging the 20-inch Crash of Doom from Zildjian too. I usually have that on my far side.
Mm-hmm.
But I rarely use crash cymbals. I think I only have 2 crash cymbals right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually set up as hi-hats if I am using them. Everything else is just different sets of hi-hats and rides and some effects stuff.
Right. And I guess in the electronic world, I mean, it's similar to fills and crashes. In the electronic world, you don't hear either of those very much.
Yeah, not too much.
That's why when you said you played the fill on the thing, I was like, oh, that's actually cool. And I gotta like go to that specific spot and hear that at some point. I like the idea.
It rarely happens.
It rarely happens, man. As a guy that puts out a good bit of media content, etc., on social media, Instagram, etc., it's one of the questions that I like to ask people who engage in it that frequently, because for me, sometimes I've always said that it's a bit of a slippery slope, because I know on one hand, I feel like the phone technology wants to keep me as this like, dopamine zombie, like obliviously walking through life, addicted to my fucking phone. And social media, you know how you could just go into a rabbit hole and be like, where'd the last hour go? Been scrubbing through drumming videos for the last hour. I was supposed to do this, that, and the other. But obviously it's been good for you to get out the content and have people know what you do, and from the self-promotional side of it. But do you enjoy, I guess, engaging in it that frequently? Does it at all at times feel like it's obligatory, or how do you sort of navigate that?
No, I mean, I definitely don't feel like I have an obligation to be posting at all.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing it because anytime I'm playing or recording, like my phone is recording.
Right.
So a lot of it is just me pulling snippets from stuff I'm either recording for my Patreon or recording for other people. Maybe like 25% of the time it's me and my buddy Chris, like, hey, let's make a garage track, little post or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff, like, I mean, it really doesn't take long at all.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't feel that much of of pressure to do anything on there. Cause I mean, I'll go, a week without posting, 10 days without posting. And then sometimes I'll post, like 2 weeks straight. And a lot of the times it's just from the same day.
Right.
Like exactly. In a lot of my posts, I'm wearing the exact same clothes. Like I do change my clothes sometimes.
Right.
When I do laundry, but
yeah, totally. When with those postings, are you most of the time it's just straight up like phone audio, or do you also sometimes, I guess, if it's more of like a post production thing and you want to do a little mix on it, then you edit the video and then that's what gets uploaded?
Yeah, I mean, basically every time I'm sitting down to play, like the DAW is open and I'm recording
Yeah,
into the DAW. So,
gotcha.
and when I do Instagram stuff, like I don't use Final Cut or anything. Like I just use an app on my phone and then bounce the audio from the DAW, upload it to the app, and then match it up with the video, and that's it.
Oh, damn. All right, that's crazy.
Yeah, like all the ones where I do like the overdub things and there's like, 6 arms coming out of me. It's all just an app that I have.
Oh, that's wild. All right. Crazy. I'll have to pick your brain about that app then. That's wild. Well, do you have any upcoming projects or any live gigs set on the calendar presently, or what's going on?
Live stuff, I mean, other than the random local gig, we are kind of waiting to hear when the Machinedrum tour can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Just with all the travel restrictions and quarantine and everything. So still waiting to hear back on that. I'm going to be going to upstate New York to do some recordings probably in the next couple months, but everything else is kind of in the works.
Yeah.
And I can't really specify anything else.
I hear you. With Machinedrum, is that going to be US and Europe or just US?
The live show has a really intense visual aspect to it. I know he's been working with Daito Manabe and a couple other people. I think the Strange Loop TV as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's been working with them to create the live show. So he wanted to do it in like a bigger theater situation and have like multiple days in each city rather than just hitting city after city after city.
Yeah.
Because it's more of like it could definitely be a show where you see it in a theater sitting down, just with everything that's going on. Whoa. With the visuals.
That's killer.
Yeah.
Were you able to play any shows with him previously at that extent with all of the visuals and everything included?
No. So I was, he did a virtual live show and I was supposed to do one of those with him. And then once they got into figuring out the logistics of everything, by the time that they figured that out, they ended up just releasing his virtual live show. I might still do some filming with that just as like a promo for the tour. Mm-hmm. But again, everything's kind of just up in the air right now.
Yeah. Where is he based out of? The States or in Europe?
He's in LA.
Oh, he's in LA. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, I know he lived in Berlin for a while, but he's in LA now.
Are you going to take any vacations anytime soon? Did you take any vacations in the last year?
Not really, just random trips to different cities. Yeah. No, honestly, we've just been at the house. I mean, we go camping every once in a while, so there's that, just little trips.
Yeah. I'm looking at your yard for those of you that will be listening to this. I'm talking to Ian, and he's got his what I'm presuming is his backyard in the background. So I'm assuming that's also how you can play the drums without necessarily bothering the neighbors, quote unquote, too much.
Yeah. Even like the houses that are right next to us, we still have quite a bit of space between them. And not that it's like perfect soundproofing or anything, but I have a hell of a lot of RLX like all around my setup.
Nice.
So I'm sure that helps a little bit.
Cool, man. Well, Ian, it was fun talking to you, man. I'm glad to connect the dots. Haven't seen you via social media for so long and kind of pick your brain as to some of your influences and drum thoughts, sounds, and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Enjoy the day, and we'll catch up soon, my man.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, man. All right, that about does it for today's episode. Hope y'all dug the combo with Ian, and thanks to Ian himself for hanging for an episode. Definitely cool catching up with him and picking his brain about recording and drumming and drum sounds and everything in between. We'll catch y'all on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.